Hello and welcome to this video, which will explain use of a spreadsheet that allows you to bulk or to batch, rename, copy and move files and folders in Windows Explorer. So for example, if you've ever had a listing of files in Windows Explorer that looks like this, and you wanted to quickly edit all of the file names, of course the slow way to do it is to click F2 to go into the file name, to delete the text or add text that you want to add or change, push enter, and then do that one by one on all of the file names. But if you've ever looked at a list like this, you've had many files you wanted to change the names of, and you just wished you could have used Excel functionality, such as find and replace, or any of the other data manipulation tools that are available in Excel. If you wanted to use all of those to edit these file names really quickly, then you could try using the spreadsheet available for download in the description below. So what I have here is a folder in Windows Explorer that has two subfolders. The one subfolder has a bunch of Home Depot receipts, and the other subfolder has a bunch of Rona receipts. In all cases, I don't like the way that they're named, because there's an excess of words here that aren't needed. I know that if it's a receipt, it's for stuff that was purchased, so those are redundant words that I want to remove. And I want to remove those words from these file names, and also from the ones in the Home Depot folder. So what I'll do is I'll go into this top folder, I'll search for a period to display all of the items. I'm then going to select all of the file names, not the folder names, but just the files. Right click, hold down the Shift key, and select Copy as Path. I'm then going to go to the Excel spreadsheet, which is available for download below. Now you'll see that this spreadsheet has a number of different tabs, but for now I'm going to demonstrate the tab that allows you to rename files in place. In other words, don't copy them, don't move them, just rename them exactly where they are. And I do note here in the instructions at the top, you should make a backup of your library before running this macro, because otherwise you might ruin your data. So I'm going to paste in the paths that I just copied out of Windows Explorer. I'll click the blue button, and what that'll do is that'll place into this column over here just the file names that it's going to take off the end of the paths. You can see from the formula bar that it pulls those file names off the end of the paths using that formula. And then I'm going to click the yellow button to copy and paste these file names as plain text into the next column. So here they are in column D. And I do this because most often you're going to want to use existing data as the foundation for the new file names that you're going to want to use in the future. But you're not limited. You can put anything you want in this new file name column, and it's going to rename them according to what you've got in this new column over here. So in my case, I want to get rid of this phrase for stuff that was purchased because I consider that unnecessary. So I'm going to put that on the clipboard. I'm then going to select all of my Home Depot receipts, which came out of the one folder, and the Rona receipts we can see are in there as well. I'm going to go Control Find, paste the phrase I want to get rid of, replace with nothing, replace all. It's made 30 replacements, 26 Home Depot receipts and 4 Rona receipts, and now I'm good to go. I can click the button to rename the files. Again, assuming I've made a backup, so if I need to undo things, I can do that. So before I click the button, let me just show you that if I go, for example, into the Home Depot folder, I've got the one that I renamed correctly before, but all of the others still have that extra wording in the file names. But when I click the button to rename the files, it says it was successful, and I go back to my folder and I can see that all of those files have now been renamed. So that's demonstration of the Rename Files in Place tool. When you're done, you can click the gray button to remove all of the data, so you can start clean for next time. But you can basically edit the data in this column for the new file names using any of the functionality in Excel. Find and replace, the left and the right functions, VLOOKUP, whatever. You can even take this data elsewhere, manipulate it, and then bring it back. You just got to make sure you don't change the order of things, because remember, it's these paths with these existing file names that are going to be given these new file names. So if you don't have things in the same order, then you're going to misname the existing files. But this is probably the most useful tab of all of the tabs on the spreadsheet, and I use it very often, but I will go ahead now and describe some of the other tabs as well. So the second tab I'll demonstrate is called Create Subfolders, and what that does, it allows you to quickly create a large number of folders in Windows Explorer, and these would be empty folders that you would be creating. So for example, if I go into this folder named Create Folder Trees, and let's assume I had a whole lot of photographs that I wanted to put in a bunch of folders, but I wanted to quickly create those folders instead of having to do it tediously. So let's assume I'm going to start in the year 2001. Well, if I did it the normal method in Windows Explorer, I'd right-click, click New, Folder, 2001. And then let's imagine in every year I wanted to make a folder for every month. Well, I could go through it manually, and I could do it this way. Make a folder for every month, and then when I was done this year, I'd go to 12, then I'd come here, and I'd do 2002, and I'd keep going. Of course, that would take quite a while to do. So if I wanted to do that using the macro, I'll just delete those items there. So now we see the Create Folder Tree library is empty. But I could come into the spreadsheet, go to the Create Folders tab, and I could write in the folders that I want to create. So first of all, I'd write 2001, 2002, 2003, and then I'd type in 1 to 12, and then of course I could copy this data down. Obviously you can use whatever normal autofill and other tools you're familiar with in Excel to create this data, but it's much quicker to create this data in Excel than it is to do it manually in Windows Explorer. And also I can leave these empty. So long as there's a entry on the first row, then for subsequent rows in the second level of subfolders, it'll just autofill in this when the macro runs. I can also specify a third level of subfolders. So for example, down in 2010 over here, I've put in Vancouver Olympics 2010. So we'll see that that'll be a subfolder created. Of course, this is just a hypothetical example designed to demonstrate how it works. Now, I do need to specify the parent folder path so the macro knows where to put them. So here, I come back into Windows Explorer, I go into the address bar, highlight the path, click copy, come into this cell in the spreadsheet, and put the path in. So it's going to create this folder tree structure that I've defined, first level subfolder, second level subfolder, and third level subfolder. It's going to create that folder tree within that parent folder. So I'll click to create the data. It says it's finished running. We can see it did auto fill down the years, and then 2002 starts there. And if we go back to the folder in Windows Explorer, it's made them. So it's got empty folders at this stage. I can write files into them later, but we'll see as well in 2010, in February, it made the Vancouver Olympics 2010 folder. So if you do ever have a need to create a library of empty folders in Windows Explorer, you could use that sheet, and then when you're done, you click the Clear Data macro. The next tool I'll demonstrate is the Rename Paths sheet over here. So it's important to keep in mind that this macro cannot create new subfolders, but it can merely move files or folders from one location to the other. And although this macro is not one that I use very frequently, it can be useful if you want to remove certain files from a folder and not delete them, but put them somewhere different. So for example, let's look at that collection of Home Depot receipts. And let's assume I've got a list of them, there's 26 of them, and they're all in a subfolder named number 1. But I want to submit these receipts to someone else for review, but I want to take out the small dollar value ones. Like if it's less than, say, $10, it's just not worth talking about in terms of maybe the claim I'm making. So I want to remove from this library all receipts less than $10. So here's how you could do it. First of all, I select all of the files, hold down the Shift key, right click, copy as path, and bring the data into the Rename Paths sheet by pushing Ctrl V. I then am going to put the same data into the Target Paths column, because this is the current paths, that's the target paths. So now I want to delete all items from this list that are less than $10. So this is a bit of gymnastics that's got nothing to do with the operation of the macros that I'm demonstrating here. But what I'll quickly do is I'll take this data, I'll put it on another sheet, I'll use data, text to columns, delimited. I'm going to use the open round bracket as a delimiter. That'll basically break off just the $3.12 part. And then in this column, I'm going to go Control Find. I want to find roundbracket.pdf, replace with nothing, replace all. Okay, and then I'm going to bring these dollar amounts back to my main spreadsheet. I'll paste them in column D over here. And then I can take all of this data and I can sort by column D, and I'll do it smallest to largest. and then I can delete all of these rows over here because these are all less than $10. Alright, so now I'm going to move just the items that are greater than $10 into the new folder, so I can then share that folder with whoever I want. But I can delete these dollar amounts. Right, but they're currently in subfolder 1 and I want to move them into subfolder 2. So I'm going to select this data. I'm going to go Control Find, Example /1. I want to replace with Example /2. Now in this selected data, it's going to delete all of these 1s and put a 2 in there. So let me replace all on those, 17 of them. So before I click the green button, let's just confirm what I'm going to do. I'm going to take these paths, which have a 1 in them, corresponding to the 1 folder, which has the data, and it's going to rename them or move them by putting them into a folder that has a 2 there. As I mentioned, this macro doesn't create folders, so the 2 folder needs to exist, and it does, and it's empty right now. So that's fine. So let me go. I'm going to click the rename button. It says the macro is finished running. Go back to the folder. There we go. In the 2 folder, I've got all of these items that are greater than $10, and in the 1 folder, I've got left behind all of the items that were less than $10. So that explains how you can use the rename or move sheet to move data around, and once again, when you're finished, you can clear the data. Okay, so the final example I'll explain in this video will demonstrate how to use the copy to folders and can rename sheet. So an example where this sheet could be useful is, let's imagine you've got a folder full of a large amount of photographs. In this example, there's 950 photographs, and they all got names that are quite unhelpful. You can see a bunch of them have just got image with numbers, and if we go further down, some of them have just got numbers, .jpeg in every case. And let's assume that these photos, we'll see in a few minutes, but let's assume that they were taken over a large number of years, and we want to organize them into year folders and month subfolders, just like I demonstrated a few minutes ago with the subfolder creation example. So I've used this, for example, on litigation matters involving a large construction project. The construction project went on for a number of years, and if you ever want to know what was happening on the job site in a particular month, in a particular year, if you had the data in a folder like this, it would be impossible to know, like February 2016, what was happening. Well, I have no idea. I don't even know which month or year any of these photos relate to. So what I'm going to do is show you how you can pull the date data out of the photographs and then place the photographs into folders. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get the paths, the names, and the date taken information for each of the files in the library. Now I'm not going to show how to do that in this video because I previously made a video that explained how to do that. I'll put a link in the description to the video, but you can also find it by searching on YouTube for this heading over here, Export Detailed Metadata from Windows Explorer to an Excel spreadsheet. And that basically explains how to use the file list tool from Jam Software, and it'll allow you to extract this information here for all of the photographs in your library. So what I'll do now is I'm going to take this data. I'll start with the date taken information, and I'm actually going to paste it into a helper sheet that's available on the right hand side of the spreadsheet available for download in the description below. And I'm going to clear this data to begin with. But what I'll do is, first of all, I'll paste my date information. Oopsie, I lost it off the clipboard there for a moment. But I'll take the date information and I'll paste it into this date column over here. I'll then go back to the other spreadsheet and get my description information, which is really the file name. And I'll paste it into the description column on my helper sheet. And then at the top of the helper sheet, what I've got here is some formulas in this zone over here, which juggle the data contained in the left-hand columns and use it to create a file name. So the one I'm going to want to use today is going to be this one over here, which is a formula that takes the date information contained in column B, breaks it up into year, month, day, and then combines it with the description to make a file name. So you can study these formulas in your own time, but I'll show you what I mean by that. I'll just go Control C there to copy that, put it down here, what we can see, it's June 12th, 2019, the photograph was taken. So it pulls out 2019 June 12th, and then it builds the file name using this formula by specifying the date, underscore, photo, then the time, then a dash, and then the original file name. So the original file name is one image and then some numbers. Well, there it is there. So what I'll do is I'll take this formula set over here, which works for me, and I'll copy it down, and then I'll autofill to the bottom. So what I now have is useful file names to replace these less useful file names that I had to begin with. So I'll take this file name information, all of it. I'll go to the copy to folders and rename sheet, and I'm going to paste it into the new file names column. I've got to make sure I just paste it as values. Then I will go back to my raw data spreadsheet and get the path information. Now again, I've got to be careful that I haven't sorted or juggled the order of this data. I know I haven't, but I'm just pointing out that you've got to be careful about that. And if I put the path information in there, click the blue button to pull the file names into this column, I can now see that this existing file name is going to be replaced with this new file name. Now there's one more piece of the puzzle, because not only do I want to rename these files, but I want to put them into folders. In other words, I do not want to rename the files in place. If I was going to rename the files in place, I would just be using this first tab described earlier. But I want to copy them into new folders by month and by year. So the first thing I need to do is I need to come up here and I need to specify the target parent path. In other words, where is going to be the location for this new library. So let's go into Windows Explorer here. I'll just make a new folder called New Library. Hold down the Shift key, right click, copy as path, go into the target folder. There it is. Don't have quotation marks. It's described over here. Although if you do, I think the macro just removes them anyway. So that's going to be the location for my new library. Now I need some more information because I want to specify the target folder and the target subfolder. In my case, I'm only going to use year and month folders. I'm not going to have a subfolder, but I go back to my helper sheet over here and I can pull out this data, year and month. Let's go to the bottom, copy it, and then come back to this sheet for the copy and rename. And then let me just show you what I did before in case you don't know the shortcuts, the keyboard shortcuts. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste as values into those columns. So after I've pasted values, I see that in fact it's got leading zeros. If I don't want the leading zeros on the month names, then I can use the data, text to columns, uncheck all of these, and just send it to general, and then that'll get rid of the leading zeros. So now I'm good to go. I've got my original paths, got my original file names, I've got my new file names, and I've got the folders that the files are going to be copied into. Again, this is going to be a copy, it's not going to be a move, but despite that, you should make a backup before running the macro, and there's some other guidance up here that you should follow. And then the last thing to tell you about is it's your choice whether or not you want to check this box over here. If you do check this box, every time a new subfolder is created, it's going to warn you. Now I'm not going to have that on in this case because it's going to be too many warnings, it's going to be annoying. So I'm going to uncheck that box, and I'm just going to confirm that the new library's got nothing in it right now. So if I come here and I click the green button to run the macro, it's going to copy all the files and place them into the folder library. Now it can take a little bit of time. This is 1,000 photographs, so I'm going to pause the video for a moment and I'll let you know when it's finished. Okay, the macro's finished. It's a message here saying that 950 files were successfully processed. That probably took about 40 seconds, maybe a minute at max, to finish. And if we go look at our results, we're now in the new library. Remember, this was empty before. Then 2016, and if we go into a particular month, you can see a listing of the photographs, all named according to their date and their time. So if this was a construction project that you wanted to know what was happening in October 2016, you can go and browse through these photographs. And just to be clear exactly where the data came from, when you use the file list tool, it pulled out the date taken information, so October 29th, 2016 at 5:02 p.m. That's what is now in the file name. So that's how you can rename a large collection of photographs. I've done this for up to 10,000 photographs, and it makes it very useful to just browse to a year and a month and figure out what was happening on the construction site at that particular time. So hopefully you find some of these tools useful, but just always do remember to make a copy of your data before running the macros, so if anything goes wrong, you can always go back to a clean set of data. Okay, thanks.